Hello everyone, it's Greg from Edinburgh Renaissance Fencing Academy here with the final video in our current series on Rodolfo Capoferro's Italian rapier system of the early 1600s. As today's video is a kind of conclusion to the series, I'd like to give my personal advice on how you can train most effectively in the Capoferro style. And then hopefully go on to fence effectively when you have the opportunity to have a bout with somebody else. So I'd like to give you my 6 top tips on how to train effectively. I will try to keep them as short as possible. Tip number 1 is focus on principles more than techniques. So most historical fencing treatises contain a combination of principles and techniques. So principles are the big picture things like the basic tactics to use, the body mechanics, the understanding of measure, and so on and so forth. While the techniques are the specific technical things that you do, like the scanso della vita or the feint followed by a stoccata on the inside line, and so on and so forth. Capoferro's treatise contains many techniques. It's quite a detailed book, in fact. So it's tempting to try to learn the system by just learning all these techniques and having this catalogue of different moves in your head. But in my opinion, that's not really how the system's designed to work. The techniques are there to give you examples of how the principles can be applied in combat, but they're only examples. If you try to learn a sequence of, oh, I do X and my opponent does Y, and then I finish him off with Z, you're quite often going to go astray because things won't work out that way in free fencing all of the time. Maybe you do move X and your opponent performs move B in response. What do you do? Because you're set up to do move Z to finish him off, but now it won't work. So what you do is use your knowledge of the principles to adapt to the situation. In my videos in this series, I've tried to highlight what these principles actually are for the Capoferro system. And a lot of the time it comes down to body mechanics, timing, and measure. And also the really general principle of always trying to keep yourself covered and protected from the threat of the opponent's attack. So if you focus on these principles, then you should be able to fence effectively no matter what your opponent does. Okay, point number 2, try to develop fluid movement. I see too many people practicing style like Capoferro's by holding these very rigid, stiff postures where they're kind of moving in a clumsy way like this, doing little moves with the sword, attacks, recoveries, defenses, ripostes. And it's very jerky, and it's just not very practical, really. If you look at any high-level martial artist in any fighting style, you will almost certainly find that they can move in a very fluid and graceful and controlled way, no matter what's going on in the fight. This is what you should aim for. And the way to do this is to stay calm in your mind, keep your limbs relaxed, and engage your core muscles, your vita, your waist in particular, in all of the movements that you do. And this should allow you to kind of flow around and adapt to whatever the opponent's doing, attacking and defending, however necessary, making feints and flowing into real attacks, repositioning yourself. So we're looking for this fluid movement where your arms, your limbs are nice and relaxed, and your waist and other core muscles are engaged in and driving the actions. Okay, so point number 2, develop fluid movement. Okay, third point is start slow, go fast later on. When you're learning the basics of a system in particular, you need to go slow to make sure that you're learning them properly. And that means to get a really deep and genuine understanding of the techniques. You have to go slow to check that you're using the correct body mechanics, that you're holding yourself and that you're moving your weapon in the correct way. If you build good foundations at slow speed, then you can construct the final structure of the system in its fast combat application later on. But if you don't take the time to lay those foundations, you're never going to be able to fence in a controlled and effective manner. Okay, so start slow and do many slow repetitions of all of the core techniques and training drills, and only go fast much later on. It will make you a better fencer in the long term. Next point, point number 4, is do not rush into free fencing. Now, in Capoferro's book, he actually says that the way to become a good fencer is actually to free fence with a wide variety of opponents as often as you can. But this presupposes that you have a decent level of competence when you go into those fencing bouts. It seems from the limited surviving evidence that in many historical fencing schools, fencers actually trained in an intensive way, one-on-one with the master at the school, until they achieved a basic level of competence to the master's satisfaction, before he would permit them to go and train with the other fencers, with the general pool of fencers at the school. And this is a very sensible approach. If you just jump into free fencing without having a good knowledge of the basics, you're just going to end up improvising and flailing about with your weapon. You're not going to fence effectively. You're not going to learn anything from your bouts. It's going to be about luck and possibly just speed or aggression, whether you score hits or get hit or not. Take the time to build up a good level of competence in the basic skills before you jump into free fencing. Once again, it will work out much better for you in the long term if you take the time to do this. Next point, point number 5, is try to use an appropriate training weapon for this system. So that means a training sword that is as close as you can get it to an early 1600s Italian style rapier. I should say, if you are training by yourself at home, it doesn't really matter so much. You can use a stick even, or a plastic or wooden training sword, or any old sword you've got in your cupboard. That's fine, it's enough to pace through the movements and learn some simple things. But if you actually want to fence, if you want to get as close to a real feeling for a Capoferro rapier fight, you need to use a Capoferro style rapier. And if you take the time to do this, then the body mechanics and the tactics of the system will start to make a lot more sense. Take a look at my previous video on which sword to use if you're not sure about that. And finally, my last piece of advice, point number 6, it is be faithful to the system. If you want to fence like Capoferro, you have to force yourself to try to use his tactics and techniques. At the start, this will be difficult. You will get hit by your opponent a lot. You will make many mistakes. It's only by making those mistakes that you'll be able to tweak and refine the Capoferro system so that it works for you. But if you just fall back on habitual action or stuff you've learned from other fencing systems, you're never going to learn Capoferro's fencing system. You're never going to understand how it works. Be faithful to the Capoferro system if you want to fence like Capoferro, and force yourself to try to do the moves even when you're getting hit. This is how you learn. Okay, so those are my top 6 pieces of advice for how to train in the Capoferro system. I'll put them in an abbreviated form in a little list at the end of this video for easy reference. And that's it for our Capoferro introductory series. I hope you've enjoyed this video and the whole series of videos. I hope they're useful for you and that they encourage you to go out and give this system a go, because I think it is an interesting and effective style of swordsmanship. However, we will finish there. I hope that you stay safe, train hard, and take care, and I will see you in another video sometime in the near future. Bye for now.